Good morning, and welcome to Sunday SoulDay, weekly fuel for your mind, body, and soul. Today we have two special guests, Sheng and Olivia, a dynamic couple who recently celebrated their first year of marriage. Sheng is a prolific YouTuber specializing in productivity and mind map strategies, and also leads the thriving Mind Map Nation community while serving as a corporate consultant. He's recently ventured into the world of podcasting, expanding his influence even further. Olivia is a marketing powerhouse, heading up marketing and brand strategy for a Silicon Valley-based company. Her journey took her from France back to the US, where she has honed her skills and expertise over the years. During this transition back to the US, Olivia's health journey managing bipolar 1 and multiple autoimmune diseases has not been easy and requires careful attention. As a self-proclaimed gym rat and a credentialed OCB Bikini Pro, she is keto and moves her body daily for mental clarity. Their love story began on Tinder, where they connected over their shared experiences of living in Europe. From the start, their relationship blossomed with deep conversations, authenticity, and open communication. During their first year of marriage brought unexpected challenges, but these experiences has deepened their connection and shared journey. Recently, they faced a devastating loss of Olivia's father, a trying time that brought them even closer. Together, they relocated from San Francisco to Houston, Texas to support family through this very difficult period of grief and loss. Sheng and Olivia are an inspiring duo, radiating power of love, resilience, perpetual growth, and so much more. I can't wait for you to meet them. Sheng and Olivia, welcome to Sunday SoulDay.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Oh my gosh, we're so excited. Getting to meet you the other day and just being able to sit here and go through these questions. You guys have just been so wonderful this whole time.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm telling you, that was quite an intro. Your backgrounds are incredible. I just couldn't wait to read that because I'm just amazed at what you guys have been able to accomplish individually and collectively as a couple. So I am excited to just share with everyone. So I'd love to just start because I know people heard a term that probably they're not as familiar with because I know I wasn't as familiar with it until I came across Sheng's social media. And I'm telling you, I was drawn to his social media through his energy and the content. I love learning. I'm a life learner, and I just learned so much by coming across his social media that I reached out immediately and started following him, and we've been kind of chatting ever since. So to have him on the show is a real treat for both Ali and I, because he's one of the first guests that we wanted to have on when we started Sunday SoulDay. So the first question I have for you is, what is mind mapping?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show, Tamisha, because it's an honor to actually even, to know that my work has helped out someone who is spreading so much impact in other people's lives. I mean, this is how positive ripples happen. This is how we change the world, really. So in a nutshell, what mind mapping really is just a very simple way of capturing ideas and breaking down complexity into simpler parts so that it makes chaos much more manageable. That's really what it is. If you've done any kind of diagramming, brainstorming with drawing an idea in the center, expanding it out, deconstructing that complexity, that's all it is.
I love that. And I'm telling you, his mind maps, I started using them in my personal life as well as in my professional life. And it's been a game changer for me. So thank you so much for kind of explaining. Sheng, you've worked for some really incredible organizations, kind of navigating various sectors from corporate strategy to venture capital. What specific lessons have you learned from these experiences that have been most valuable while building your mind map community?
Oh my gosh. I think across all these different experiences, because I've worked across basically, 7 different roles across 8 different companies. And it's been an incredible journey across, the world. I would say that the recurring theme throughout all of this is change as well as resilience, right? Like people always ask me what resilience is. I would say that resilience is your ability to actually adapt to change and overcome challenges along the way. Right? That's really all it is. And it's very different for every person. for me, a lot of my resilience was actually built up through my professional career because I've, always chosen kind of like these interesting paths that really sparked my curiosity. But I have to say that the very first time that I was truly tested was actually after my second job out of college, my first startup job, and I was laid off. It was like, around the time of the financial crisis, but it was on the upturn actually. And I was working for the solar company. And during, I think like 2011, that was when the solar market tanked for the very first time. And coming out as a recent grad, I was like, I wasn't expecting that. You just don't expect to be laid off, right? It's like your first time for everything. And then suddenly it's like, hey, your paycheck stopped. I even got an apartment actually with a mortgage like 3 months before. So now I'm stuck with a mortgage, right? So it's like, okay, what do? I had to just like, I was collecting unemployment benefits. I had a mortgage to pay, had to cover my own health insurance, basically. So it's like, you got to get really resourceful, right? And I looked at my apartment. I was like, hey, there's 2 other rooms. It's a 3-bedroom apartment. I'm going to rent out the other 2 rooms. I'm going to start going across my entire network to see, who needs essentially help with project management, strategy work, whatever it is. I was willing to like just learn and hustle through it. So, 8 months later, 100 job applications later, right? Like tons of interviews. I had like 2 hustles at that time. I started my own company with college friends. I had 2 of my rooms filled up in recurring revenue every single month. So at the end of the 8 months, it was super, like, I just felt like that victory was really sweet. And I ended up getting into Google actually on their strategy team. And that basically was actually my dream job. And I don't think I could have like made it in there without this like crazy downturn initially that made me just like grind.
Oh my gosh, there's so much there what you said, and I love that you turned like such a negative time or like a challenge into such a positive, and I think like that really goes to just attribute to your mindset and how you like started thinking instead of thinking on your feet, like, okay, how can I like turn this into a situation that is going to be helpful to me during this time, and then you surpass probably even your expectations, like landing Google is just amazing because it's I always tell people Google is the mecca, so that's so awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And you're like I said, your background is just incredible. Like not many people, and I know this, I recruit a lot of people, and so like not many people touch that many sectors, like they don't get that wealth of experience. Like they tend to kind of either stay in the larger tech companies, or if they're startup, like myself, I did all startups the majority of my career, and so with a little venturing out into venture capital. But I love that about your background. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
Hi, Sheng. Hi, Olivia.
Hey, Ali.
Hi. I'm so excited to be interviewing the 2 of you and just to hear your story. It's so incredible. Sheng, so Mind Map Nation has become a vibrant community of connected thinkers. Could you share some insights into the power of mind mapping and how it can benefit individuals in their personal and professional lives?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, after going across all these different roles in companies and stuff, the one tool that stuck with me, I mean, I've learned so many different things, right? I've learned design, product management, business analysis, all these things. But the one common tool and skill that's carried me throughout this entire thing since college, actually, when I was a student consultant, was mind mapping. And on the professional side, that's actually where I picked it up first. Like a lot of the top management consultants actually use mind mapping in order to break down the complexity of a project, right? Let's say you got a client that is going at like needs a go-to-market strategy for their new feature or their new product. It's like, okay, but how do we do that, right? It's like, that complexity, that chaos hits you in the face. And a lot of times people just kind of like freeze. We don't even know where to start. Well, with mind mapping, literally, you're just going like, okay, in the center is go-to-market. Then the next question, what I call the different nodes of a mind map, because all it is an expansion of an idea, is the first question that you would ask is, okay, which market, right? Like, who is it for? What do the different, people in it? What's the user persona like? What's their age and all that? So that and already is like an expansion of a particular problem, which is go to market. And then the next question would be is like, how do we want to do that, right? What is the feature set that is going to address this particular who? That's the what, essentially, of this mind map. And then it's like the how, right? What's the approach to building it? How many people do I need? Do I need engineers? Do I need designers, right? That's the how. And then there's the when, which is, how long is it going to take, right? Is it going to be 2 weeks, 1 week, 2 months, half a year? And then finally, the last node in this hypothetical mind map would be metrics, because what can't be measured can't be improved, right? And this is especially true for new product, launches where it's just somebody's idea, for example, right? And it's like, okay, but how do we actually measure this performance? Is it through installs if it's an app? Is it daily actives, monthly actives? Is it revenue? How much are we going for? So anyways, just, even talking through it, right? This is the structure that a mind map essentially gives you. Either you have a template already in mind, which is what I share on my YouTube channels, as well as on Instagram, or you just organically facilitate the people in the room or yourself to try to discover where you want to go. So that's a professional side. On the personal side, I use mind mapping, for anything that's really complex, right? And I would say there's nothing more complex than our inner selves, our inner emotions. So I developed a technique called emotion mind mapping, where literally you start with the question. Again, every mind map starts with a question or a topic. In this case, it's how am I feeling? How do I feel, right? And then I just start mapping out, okay, I'm feeling angry, okay, but what kind of anger? I expand that out. Am I aggravated? Am I annoyed, right? And for this, I actually use a tool called the Human Emotion Wheel, which is an awesome, just look it up. There's actually a ton of different ones, but I use one from the Jinto Institute, and it really breaks down the 6 main emotions into its secondary and tertiary parts so that it can be very, very specific about how you feel. Once you map out exactly how you feel, and it's very important to be specific, because you're not specific about your emotions, then if you can't identify how you feel, you can't start addressing it, right? All you know is that you're angry, but anger is just a ball of mess inside of you, right? But if I know that I'm annoyed and I'm aggravated, then I can start asking, okay, what am I annoyed by, right? I know I'm not enraged, but I'm annoyed, okay. And then I start mapping out and expanding out the triggers, or what I call the events that bring me this particular emotion. So in one instance, actually, for example, Olivia and I sometimes get into arguments, right? And I'm annoyed essentially by, let's say, the fact that what's something that annoys me, babe?
Oh my gosh, the way, so he tells me, he goes, it's funny how the trash can keeps moving. And I'm like, do you find that funny, or does it annoy you? Because I think it annoys you.
Yeah. So for context, Olivia tends to move a lot of things around and stuff. So I'm just like, okay, this is kind of bothering me, right? So then the thing is, if it's just anger, then I'm just like, okay, but I can't address this specific thing. And then it's like, okay, well, this part is what's annoying me. What's the best? Then the secondary question then is, what's the best way to bring this up, right? Because I can approach it with anger. I can meet, this thing that's annoying me with anger, or I can slow my thinking down, my emotions down, and go ask myself, okay, what is the best way to approach her in this, right? And sometimes it's actually asking a question. It's like, oh, I noticed that the thing moved. Why is that? But also I have to be very intentional about my tone, because she can also take it the wrong way. It's like, wait, that's a rhetorical question, right? So then I'm thinking like, okay, how is the best way to actually address this thing? So sometimes I actually go like, what drives you actually around it, right? I'm trying to actually understand her. So I'm suddenly taking on a mindset of curiosity rather than being responsive or reactive actually to my annoyance, right? So by mapping everything out, it's like I can actually see the progression of both my emotion, develop my emotional literacy along the way, but also very clearly identify the triggers and how to deal with it.
I love that. I love how you explain both personal and professional. And as you're talking, I'm thinking how I'm going to use this with my clients, because they always talk about barriers to success and to happiness. And so breaking things into manageable steps or pieces to help reduce overwhelm and increase motivation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Sheng, in your role as a corporate consultant, you've interacted with various professionals seeking guidance. What are some common challenges or mindset barriers you've observed, and how do you help individuals overcome them?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. There's two types of clients I typically deal with, and I actually more specialize with helping people get their projects essentially to a what I call orderly state from the chaos state, right? So I think with the people who are already on this entrepreneurial journey and they're running their teams pretty efficiently, it's really a matter of facilitation. It's like high level asking, okay, what is the biggest challenge for you right now? What are you doing right now that is not working? And then I actually help them mind map through essentially all the different factors, and we expand on all the different variables. And typically, I'm not talking for like 70% of the time. I'm mostly just asking questions. And it's not until the last 15 minutes that a lot of the insights start coming on. I almost think of it as context and information collecting at first. And once I have everything in front of me, let's say in a mind map, then I'm able to go and start connecting the dots and drawing the different patterns. So for one example, one of my clients was actually thinking of, let's say, hiring a COO, or actually a chief of staff, right? And then before I even get into the logistics of hiring a chief of staff, I actually ask him, why do you want to hire a chief of staff, right? Because understanding the why is extremely important, because people typically think in terms of the what and how level, because that's how it manifests in their mind. It's like, I feel this way, I'm feeling all these overwhelming stuff. I got to hire somebody to manage it, right? But okay, let's talk about why you need to do that. So his response was, a lot of my tasks are, falling through the cracks, and my team is giving me a lot of stuff, and I need somebody to even just manage my schedule and manage me when I'm not responding enough to people, but also just be this conduit of communication, right? So that's the why. And then we go into, okay, but how do we address that, right? Does it involve hiring a person, or do you need a better productivity system, better tools? Do you want to use AI for some of this, like the meeting summaries and all that? Because, managing another person also takes time, right? So then we kind of divide up into the different different solutions to address that. But it's very systematic, actually, and all just, it's from a question standpoint. Because I actually believe that most of us already have the answers within us, but we're not asking the right questions. So the mind map for me is just a tool to put all of our thoughts and questions down in a non-linear fashion. That's really key, because we have 1,000 ideas a day, 1,000 thoughts and stuff. But if you're not able to capture the best ones, or even capture all of them and start eliminating the bad ones, it's very difficult. That's where overwhelm starts, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for putting emphasis on the concept of that we already have the answers within us, and the importance of the why.
Yeah.
That was just incredible. And I'm thinking of ways to now incorporate the mind mapping into my coaching, because a lot of the questions that we ask, it's getting to peeling back is what I like to call it. I keep peeling back to learn more. And so there's so much curiosity that goes into it, but I can see how this could be so powerful, in an intake meeting when I'm just trying to learn, and even on the recruiting side through the Craig network, really using that to understand the client even more. So thank you so much for sharing that. That is I'm so going to use that. I had a question for you, Sheng. You've built I am amazed at the success that you've had on YouTube, and you built this just really successful channel and Mind Map Nation community, helping thousands of people manage their personal and professional lives. Corporate consultant and now podcaster. How has your experience in these different roles influenced your perspective on productivity and mind map strategies?
Oh man. Uh, I would say
Good
that,
question.
yeah, no, definitely. I think from a productivity standpoint, my philosophy is that okay, first of all, everything that we do is a project, right? Like, it doesn't even matter if I'm launching a YouTube video or a YouTube channel, creating a video, or even, planning or family vacation or something. Like, everything is actually a project. And every project can be broken down into simpler parts, right? That's actually my entire approach, essentially, to project management and launching all these different, offerings, essentially. For example, like, I just launched a new program called Hustle Launchpad, and this is literally to design to get people with ideas or existing entrepreneurs launch their product, essentially new passion project, in 8 weeks, right? And it really is just breaking it down into its parts. It's like we go through the mindset component. First of all, it's like we're asking, okay, what would you do if you had no fears? What would you do if anything were possible? Why do you think why are you the best person for the job, right? That's the first step, because if we don't understand this is the why, essentially, right? Then, the mindset part is going to like stump you and resist you every single step of the way. If you don't know why you're the best person for it, this is where self-doubt comes out and stuff, right? Once we make that map, I tell my clients, essentially, review this map every single week, if not every single day, and update it as you go, as you learn, essentially, because that's bound to happen. And that's the beauty of a mind map, is that it's additive. It's a living document for you to add and subtract. That in itself is progress. And then we map out what I call the blueprint, right? The blueprint of your minimal viable product. We're not going to boil the ocean with your 8-week launch. That's impossible. You're not going to get like a product with 10 features and everybody love. That's just not, that's like everybody's fantasy, but it's just not reality.
Not at all.
Right? You can relate to it all too much, Misha.
No, completely. I'm just soaking up all the knowledge, but also like, I would have loved this when I first began, because I'm like, why? Especially the question around, why am I the best person for this job? That is so powerful. And I'm telling you, I know this because I'm in this coaching community right now, the Jay Shetty Coaching Certification School, and we have a lot of the coaches that are like trying to launch these businesses, but they're running into like a wall right now, like because they self-doubt is creeping in, like they don't believe that they're the best, and they're like, I don't even know what I'm doing. So I mean, we see it so time and time again. So these tools that you're creating are just so, I mean, it's incredible.
Absolutely. No, for sure. I mean, and that's just like, that's the mindset part, right? And then we just, break apart basically their MVP into its separate parts. And then what we do is essentially like translate all these, subcomponents of the MVP into what I call essentially Pomodoros, like 25-minute sprints, essentially, right? And you just get yourself focused on doing it. So literally like launching the YouTube channel, new businesses, and my Mad Nation community, it all started with just like, 25 minutes at a time. That's really all it is. With enough focus, you can get there.
Yeah, the focus is a huge component. And I think a lot of times when you're first starting, like you lose that because all the other things kind of creep in and
absolutely
mindset. So
I would even say that like focus is what makes a difference between like people who just sit on their asses versus people who are actually succeeding in the digital age, right? Yeah. And focus is actually, for me, it's actually an equation. It's not rocket science, but it's actually quite simple. So for me, focus equals the concentration and the direction of effort, right? Like everybody talks about the grind these days. It's like, oh, if you want to make it, you gotta grind. But if you don't know how to focus, where to focus it at, let's say out of those 10 features, which one are you going to focus on the most? That's what I'm talking about, focus, right? That's the direction. And then the concentration is like, how do you condense that effort into just like that 1 hour productivity? Because time is not built the same, right? 1 hour on Netflix or just like researching and watching YouTube videos is very different than focused effort working on something.
Yeah, and I always say like we all have the same 24 hours in a day, but it's the amount of energy that you're putting into like that 1 hour, like towards your focused efforts, your goals. So I love that you said that. Switching gears a little bit, I want to talk to Olivia. Before we dive into how Sheng converted you into this mind mapping world, I'd love to just hear a little bit more about your journey because it's so interesting. Like you spent a large part of it overseas and just even before coming to the Bay Area. So would love for the viewers to learn a little bit more about you and how you became a marketing powerhouse.
I think calling me a marketing powerhouse is a little too generous, but I appreciate that.
I've seen some of your work.
Oh, thank
That's good
you.
work.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, first of all, it's so funny because as we talk about mind maps, it's getting me all excited about finally moving over to the dark side, if you will, because Sheng saw the entire time that I would really benefit from mind maps, and he was incredibly correct. It took a little bit of time to get there, but I eventually moved over. But prior, though, to moving to SF, to kind of get back to the question, I was actually living abroad. So my parents had a dream of living in France. And so when they decided to retire early, my dad was age 52, I believe, when they decided to retire. And they've always just been super smart with their finances. We always lived under our means. Really big advice there: live under your means, so that when you get to where you want to have kind of the screw you money, if you will, a lot of tech people talk about that, to be able to kind of go off and do your own thing and just start enjoying life. We actually got to do that together. My parents said, hey, let's go to France. We'll go when you graduate. And I said, whoa, why are we waiting until I graduate? I'm perfectly happy to do high school there. And that really opened my world. In fact, that's actually one of the things that I think Sheng and I really bonded on. Not only our experience abroad, but also as I went to college. So I fell in love through high school with Europe, wanted to stay there for university. And then I was actually given an incredible piece of advice, which I think launched my career in a way, in kind of these building blocks kind of approach, if you will. I was told, I know it's easy to want to go to a big company. You should start with a startup. They're going to give you the bootstrapping experience you need to just do everything and anything and start learning almost without tools and resources. And I think that had made all the difference for me to even land than the jobs I would get later in life, because I had this experience and I was comfortable being uncomfortable. And so when I heard he was a startup, it's kind of funny because I guess I didn't really know that the Bay was such a bubble. So for me, looking at a tech bro, I don't think I knew I was looking at a tech bro and I met Sheng.
I love it.
Until I realized the whole demographic.
There's a whole demographic, yeah.
That is so awesome. And you're so right. That advice you got was golden. And I wish like more, I think now I'm seeing a shift in that, like especially kids coming out of school, like they're so set on getting into the larger organizations, the more recognizable names, and there's so much opportunity at a startup. You know, I'm so grateful that was my journey because I got to wear so many hats that I know that if I worked in a larger organization, I would not have been able to do, because I would have been a lot more siloed. So the wealth of knowledge that I've gained really carried me throughout my career. So love that.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, with a lack of resources, it forces you to be more resourceful, and the constraints actually force you to be more creative.
It's
that
true.
Is so well said and so true. Like, I mean, even on the hiring side, like not even being able to work with larger teams. Like, you know, like I used to, like a lot of my teams when I would scale organizations would be me and one other person, you know? So,
Exactly.
so I love that. That's so true.
Olivia, I'm going to shift gears real quick and go personal. So shortly after relocating to the Bay Area, you experienced some health challenges. Can you share more about this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the very first thing that kind of came onto the radar, if you will, I've always had a lot of autoimmune things that's just inflammation related. But I've kind of battled that throughout my life. So especially around, for example, if we zoom back to high school and college, around finals, I would have a lot of things come up, whether it was my eyes, it was head to toe eczema. We're talking blistering from head to toe. That kind of gives a little bit on the autoimmune side. But now that said, I've definitely been bipolar for a very long time. But what happened was I ended up coming over here, really watching my career kind of take off, getting on my feet in a way that I was super proud of. but yet I was finding myself really swing from massive, massive energy spikes to being in really severe lows. And my sister actually gently sort of approached me and said, you know, maybe you should talk to a psychiatrist. I feel like you've always, she would always say that if she could use an analogy to describe me, I'm like a roller coaster that has no middle ground. You're either at the top or even kind of perpetually skydiving is another way of expressing my energy levels. And sure enough, it kind of took a little bit of diagnosing, but after, you know, we knew it was bipolar unspecified and then bipolar 2, and then kind of most recently been diagnosed with bipolar 1. I find that being able to have the concrete diagnosis has been really, really empowering, because it's really allowed me to adjust my own expectations of myself in highs and in lows, and even expectations as a couple in a lot of ways too. I feel like we've really been able to, honestly, mind maps have been huge. It's a crazy thing, which is hilarious, but we've been able to navigate that together and really kind of check in with each other so that there is space for me to be able to kind of ebb and flow with my own energy levels.
Thank you so much for sharing, not only with your physical health struggles, but your mental health struggles. So many of us struggle with our mental health, whether it be anxiety, depression, bipolar, and we often don't feel like we have a space to share those struggles. And then, as you've kind of mentioned, and I'm sure you'll touch on, turning our diagnosis into a superpower and using it as a strength rather than a setback.
Oh, totally. That's so important. You kind of end up realizing, oh, isn't being an empath a beautiful thing in this world? Why would I want to lose that sensitivity to the world around me? Absolutely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Olivia, this next question is for you as well. Your journey is a testament to resilience and strength. What advice would you give to individuals facing health challenges or personal struggles while pursuing their professional aspirations?
I think the biggest thing, and it's beautiful because at the end of the day, we're talking on Sunday SoulDay. So I like to think about what brings you energy, right? Like, especially in a low, for me, my lows are the hardest for me. When I'm in a high, I'm enjoying it, right? I mean, it is really a roller coaster in the best ways. When I'm on a low, it's a bit different. And so I like to say everyone should find their non-negotiable things that for their own health and mental clarity will help them and help recharge them. And so again, I love the name of the podcast because in a lot of ways, it's about finding your non-negotiable thing. For me, that's the gym, that's 8 hours of sleep, 8+ hours of sleep. There's certain things that really keep me in line. And I don't know what that is for everyone. It could be dance. It could be taking it slower and giving yourself a day of grace. But whatever that is, I feel like finding your equilibrium and not waiting until you're absolutely decharged to recharge is huge.
Yeah. If anything, these are all energy generating activities, right? A lot of times people wait until it's like, oh, it's a perfect routine or the perfect time to do it. No, you actually need to start doing it now in order to get yourself to the ideal state. And just for context, Olivia is actually like, the most functional bipolar person that I know, that her therapists know, her doctors know. And they're like, wow, how are you not on medication, right? Like, it's literally these habits. These are the habits that actually sustain her, that boil her up to a level in which she can actually be functional and love life. And this is how you turn something like that could be a detriment to a superpower, because the empathic part is definitely there. The sensitivity part is definitely there.
Yeah.
But it's augmented by all these other things. And this is where discipline is actually like what brings you freedom.
Yeah. And I really like how you use the term non-negotiables. It reminds me of internal boundaries. So those are the boundaries we set and maintain within ourselves.
Totally.
And the external boundaries are those we set with others. But that important, saying the word non-negotiable, that is a boundary I'm going to set and maintain with myself. That's going to help me take care of myself on a moment-to-moment daily basis.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, that's beautiful.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Olivia. And this question's for you as well, because Shane kind of touched on it a little bit, but like, tell me more about some of those habits. You self-proclaim yourself as a gym rat, which I love that. And like credentialed OCB, bikini pro. Like, I'd love to learn just a little bit more about like what those habits look like, so we could share with some of the viewers who might be struggling with some of the same things.
Absolutely. I think it's a matter of making the time, right? So one, I definitely love going to the gym. And so it doesn't have to be a 3-hour, 4-hour thing, right? You can go literally for 30, 45 minutes. For me, I learned it was about moving my body. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. You can definitely hit it harder. For example, even the reason I competed in the first place was because I wanted to goal set. So talk about something to work towards, something to, I felt like I was in a rut at that point in my life. And I felt like, okay, if I feel like I'm not growing in other places, where can I choose to find something to really aim for? And again, not to kind of muddy the answer, because of course we're talking about the things you can do on a daily basis, but I think a part of it is also finding your own purpose. And that purpose is going to change throughout your life. There are going to be chapters depending on how much focus you might have within a given period. But the reason I even competed in the first place was definitely because I needed something to just kind of drill into and focus on a little bit. But Sheng knows and helps me stick to the non-negotiables every single day. In fact, he's always even checking in like, hey, when do you plan on going to the gym? Sometimes I feel a little bit pushed, but at the same time, I also know
kind of spotlighting you a little bit. Yeah, no,
I know.
Sometimes being a coach as a profession is you got to create that wall. Sometimes you got to dial it back, maybe like by 2 degrees.
But it's so helpful because in a lot of ways, my neurodivergence can definitely get in the way. So yes. Of course I'm bipolar, yes, but I also deal with kind of the other things of having some executive dysfunction sometimes, and like knowing that I need to do this thing, but then doing everything else. I could scrub the walls and vacuum the entire house, but still not go to the gym. Yeah. And so it's kind of these productive things that I could do, masking the thing that I'm not actually going to do. And Sheng's been really awesome with helping me reorient what I need to actually get done, really talk about non-negotiables, right? Like it goes back to that word so many times, because I think it's easy to busy our day with other things that could get done. And it's not a bad thing to get done. I mean, it's not a bad thing to clean the whole house, but
definitely not. No, I love that you are so welcoming with like his feedback too, because like a lot of times, like even with my clients, like they need accountability buddies, like without having the things that you struggle with, so I love that you're so open to that as well. And you're so right, like having a destination, like when you're setting like, I don't always like to use the word goals, but like just having like a target and a destination that you can see is so powerful, and it brings so much purpose into what you're doing, and that's a large part of what I had set with my clients and really had to incorporate into my life in all the areas of my wheel of life, because I was missing in some of the areas, like in my kind of financial bucket, and like, I was like, I didn't have like destinations, and I'm like, I need to have something to work towards, so that really, really helped me. So thank you so much for sharing.
Demisha, it takes a lot of courage to goal set as well. It's actually like staking something in the sand and saying, hey, this is what I'm going for, right? I think a lot of us tend not to almost be afraid to goal set and make it public as well, right? But that's actually when it becomes like the most powerful. This is when accountability counts, when you're actually putting your personhood, yourself on the line, that you're fighting for something. And these days, it's very easy to just like kind of, go through life and look at social media, be inspired, but actually not goal set in that way and just lean into it.
I love that you mentioned the goal setting publicly and the courage that comes along with that. I got really inspired by a gentleman. His name is Ruben Harris, and he's the CEO of Career Karma, and a founder and CEO. I don't want to take that title from him, but he set a 10-year goal plan. Like, I mean, a 10-year map. I've never seen that before. I've usually seen people do like 3 years, 5 years, but he did like a 10-year and he shared it on social media. And I just thought that was so courageous, you know, of him to do that. That inspired me. Now, I didn't go 10 years because like, I'm going to start with 1 month. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I started 1 month and I did like November and December of last year. And I just set my goals publicly. And I'm telling you, like it really held me accountable in a way that I've probably never been held accountable. I mean, I'm pretty good at holding myself accountable, but that public accountability was so powerful for me. And then on top of that, like I was able to share the goals that I didn't miss. And I was okay with that because I knew that I set so many and I was so proud of the ones that I accomplished.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that goal setting can be challenging. I always encourage my clients, meet yourself where you're at. And just to honor that, hey, getting started hard, and that's where I'm at. And once we have met ourselves there, then we can move to that next step or phase. Yeah. So this next question is for both of you. You've both shared with us how you believe in self-development and positive reframing. How do you maintain a growth mindset and handle challenges, both personally and professionally?
I would say for me, because I'm a natural goal setter, as well as, you know, I just go towards it and I work very meticulously and, you know, towards that. For me, it's actually giving grace for when I can't, when, you know, plans change, right? Like, and I would say in the last 3 months, you know, dealing with all the family stuff, Olivia's dad, her health issues and the aftermath. You know, there are times where like, hey, you know, we bought a ticket to go to France to see her parents. And then on the day that we're supposed to go, we ended up we had to cancel the flight and get a plane ticket to Houston instead. Or in Houston, we were like, oh, you know, we're going to buy tickets this weekend to go back to SF. And then suddenly, you know, her dad's health is deteriorating faster than we expected. And suddenly we're looking at 6-month leases here in Houston, right? These are like the massive life pivots that, first of all, they humble me. It's like, regardless of what you want to do, that you planned out in like 1 month, 3 months, half a year, visualize, and then life just like freaking slaps you in the face, punches you in the face, like gets you down. Not even gets you down, you know, things change. That's actually my lesson for it, which is giving myself grace for, okay, I think I have to move the milestone by a little bit. That's okay. You know, what's the most important, right? It's like, you know, family, it's our relationship, it's us essentially, and it's health.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you touched on life happens on life's terms and just kind of explaining pivoting and refocusing and what's most important.
And along that same vein, I think Sheng does a really beautiful job. I guess I don't want to say I have to do it less, but we both time block a lot. Yeah. And so on a, like, we're talking kind of micro scale right now, we're talking on a macro scale right now. On a more micro level, I think that Sheng does a really great job of closing his laptop at a certain time. And I think that has allowed us to really grind during the day, or whatever set hours that we have to grind at for work, whatever it might be. A lot of times we're working next to each other at a cafe. But then when that time comes to put down the laptop, to go make dinner, to enjoy the evening together, I feel like then we can really prioritize our own relationship as well.
And 7 p.m. non-negotiable, laptop shut down. After that, it's family time. I'm able to, you know, focus away from work and focus on family.
And that's been really big for us too, because we actually did have a time in our own relationship where we ended up going to couples therapy. Not to say we ever stopped. We just are we're in a point in our lives where our focus is elsewhere at the moment, but it has been really helpful because my therapist really reminded both of us, we just need to spend some time together. She was like, you guys are almost too good at communicating. You guys need to stop analyzing each other and just do stuff. You should watch a movie together. You should go do things together.
Yes.
And that's been really beautiful for us to be able to just come together as a couple and then still flourish.
I love that. Practicing just being rather than doing.
Yes.
It's a good reminder for couples.
Yeah, that is such a great reminder. I also time block, and I'm telling you that was a game changer for me because I'm needed to do it for the different businesses that I'm doing, as well as making sure I have enough time to be present for my children when I pick them up from school. I am gonna get better at the closing my laptop. Thank you for that little reminder. That was really good because I do not do that. So
Yeah.
I close it for a period of time. And then my kids go to bed, and then I open it right back up. So I'm gonna thank you for that. I needed that little reminder. Sheng and Olivia, I'm gonna take you guys back a little bit because we talked, but I would love for the viewers to learn a little bit more about your love story because you guys started on Tinder, which we've heard some dating coaches, they get off the apps, and then some that are saying no, get on the apps. But I would love to hear a little bit more about your journey and also tell us, where did you go on your first date? Because I thought that was pretty amazing.
I'll let you take this away. I do have a commentary on how our communication started, because that I think made all the difference for anybody, even just kind of considering apps for themselves. We were very clear from the get-go what our intentions were, as well as we were willing for those intentions to change and grow and just be transparent along the way. So that was really huge for us. And he's just better at explaining chronological things. So I feel like he described the date a little bit better.
Sure.
But from the beginning, though, we were both very clear about where we were in our own kind of dating life and what we wanted out of a relationship and what we wanted out of a partner as well.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I would say that timing is really pretty important. I would say, we met each other 2021. This was when like things started to reopen, right? But we also went through, as a society, just this depression, essentially. It's just like isolation, depression. And it's, at that point, it's like, meeting up together was like really special, right? It kind of renewed a lot of these in-person kind of experiences. So that's something that to this day, I still want to maintain this like beginner's mindset. It's like, remember during the pandemic, this live music thing is amazing. So anyways, we found each other on Tinder. She was like, a mile, 2 miles away from me. And I would say that it was like a convenient swipe, because 1 week later, actually on our first date, I was like, actually, I'm going to move 50 miles away to San Francisco instead, right? So it was almost kind of like, I don't want to say bait and switch, but it was a little bit bait and switch. But hey, you know what? Chemistry is chemistry, right? So, and my first date idea was like, hey, I noticed that you like tiny houses and stuff like that. I actually have this rooftop tent that's literally strapped to the top of my car. Do you want to go hang out in my rooftop tent, right? Go find a view and whatever. And that's basically what happened. I picked her up, and she was literally just like busting out of her work meeting actually on Friday night. This is how hard this girl works, by the way. And then,
I don't close my laptop at 7. So
that's her other partner, really. That's what I'd say. But I picked her up, and then we just got along really well. In the car, there was like a degree of deepness in terms of the conversation that we could go down to, that like I had to struggle on a first date, second date, third date in order to reach, but that was like seamless, right? And I think a lot of it has to do with her vulnerability. And I always say that vulnerability is the accelerant for relationships, right? I've dated and lived with ex-partners for 2 to 3 years that without that vulnerability component, I never really knew them, and they never really knew us. And of course, we would drift apart eventually, because who is it that you're actually seeing, right? Who is your partner? I feel like with Olivia, she always takes the vulnerable route. There's no question about it. And not only that, during our talks and on our first date, she asked a few very pointed questions actually about myself, my past, my experiences, that actually forced me to be vulnerable as well. It gave me an opportunity. And I was at a point in my life where I had done a lot of soul searching, a lot of personal growth, where I was starting to become better at vulnerable. But at the same time, there's a difference between taking the honest but not vulnerable path and honest and vulnerable, right? And she gave me multiple opportunities to choose which direction. And I followed her lead actually on that, because I could feel that this is, that she could accept me for that, but still uncomfortable. Right. But anyways, that's kind of how our first date went. And I And I feel like that was worth like at least 5, if not 10 dates.
Oh, so much
Comfort.
so. We ended up even saying, like, not to say it was moving too quickly, but I feel like we ended up deciding to really be exclusive, if you will,
Yes.
super quickly because of how deep the relationship kind of automatically fell. And he answered those questions right, because before the end of the night, fun fact, I actually did tell him about my bipolar diagnosis, which was a really big deal because that was the first time I was kind of I'd been officially diagnosed, but I hadn't dated seriously since the diagnosis. So being able to, I literally told him as we pulled up back at my house, actually, after the drive around. So that was, and he just received it so well. I was kind of ready for him to run screaming, because I think a lot of people, unfortunately, don't really understand what bipolar is. So it's easy to misunderstand.
Maybe I didn't understand it that much back then either.
That's
So that was my beginning stages of understanding neurodivergence as well. But,
That is so beautiful. And I love the tiny house and the pickup line that you gave her. It's like, but you're so spot on with the vulnerability. Like, I think about relationships that I, was in. I'm very similar to Olivia, where I lead with a lot of vulnerability. And because I want the realness to come through, like, and the authenticity to come through, like, right away. But I also think that when there's a space or some type of trust is broken or something happens, where I'll pull my vulnerability all the way back, and then I'm no longer vulnerable. And I see why a lot of the relationships that I were in previously, did not work out. So very similar to you, Sheng, in that sense. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much. And in psychology, we talk about, or even in the relationship recovery model, we talk about a relationship is an intimate partnership with two equals, and that vulnerability, the vulnerable piece, is so important. And thank you for putting a spotlight on that and how it helps to go deeper, and it helps with the longevity of a relationship and the quality of a relationship. I'm going to ask Olivia a question here. How do you maintain a deep connection and open dialogue in your relationship as you both continue to grow and evolve?
Sure. I think that we've actually managed that really well from the beginning. It helps that, of course, we started with that transparency, but we ended up carving out time. That was actually something I'd learned from, I guess, the last serious relationship I had before coming into my relationship with Sheng. I actually parted ways more circumstantially from the guy I was dating in France. And what happened there was we actually ended up learning to be friends due to me moving to the US for the job, and for him going to his master's degree in Switzerland. And so because of the circumstantial kind of separation, we ended up talking ourselves literally with almost therapeutic type questions. How will I know this will feel like a friendship? How do I move away from intimacy with you because of the distance? So we actually had etched out time together to be able to talk through these kind of questions, which was oddly therapeutic, and it worked. In the end, it worked. I'm still friends with him to this day. I love him dearly, but we moved away from each other intimately in each other's lives just because, again, circumstances. That had taught me a lot because I was ready and prepared to do that. And in fact, wanted to lead with that in my newer relationship once it got serious. And so Sheng and I were just really good at always checking in with each other, actually, and asking each other, hey, do you want to make time to discuss things? Yeah. And so, I mean, we've taken, and sometimes it's funny. So before, we used to do it really organically. Like if I felt like I had something to say, we would just kind of talk about it in the moment. Then we started realizing, again, we're almost over communicative. We needed to actually stop and analyzing all the time and have a dedicated part of the week to be able to talk through things. And so I'd be like, hey, do you want to sit down and check in on stuff? And then if his answer is yes, let's do it on Sunday. I will be able to put my stuff away, and we're actually taking designated time to talk. I think that's been huge. It's given us a lot of space.
It's so important to build a relationship on friendship.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's when you look at statistics and studies, they say what keeps a relationship together. And the number one answer is friendship, that you have that level of respect for each other as friends. And then the intimacy is the next, the intimacy or chemistry is the next piece, but that comes and goes. But that friendship is that solid foundation that can maintain the relationship. So thank you. So many great pointers for couples. I do a lot of couples work, so this is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm taking some of these notes because I'm single, so I'm going to be incorporating these once I find my guy. But you know what's so interesting is I actually carve out time to talk to my kids. And so I love that you guys do that as a couple, and I see how powerful that is for my children. And I do it individually together as a family, and then we also do it individually. So I do it like at night before they go to bed. It's like our kind of I lay in their beds, and that's our time that we talk individually, and I really give them the floor, you know, and I learned so many things in those moments. Like I learned that my son had a crush. He's 7. So after I was like crying inside a little bit because I'm like, stop growing up too fast. but I do, it's so powerful. So thank you so much for sharing that. Olivia, you and Sheng have faced difficult times recently with the loss of your father, and I'm so sorry to learn of your loss. How do you support each other like during this emotional like challenging time, and what advice do you have for couples that are kind of navigating grief and loss? What have you learned?
Oh man, so much has happened in the last few months. I think the biggest thing, and I have Sheng to thank for this, he had actually asked me, how can I support you during this time? Because he tends to be a problem solver. And so he's kind of always running forward, trying to fix the situation. But some things in life, you know, you just really can't fix. And I noticed I was coming to him and needing emotional support. Sometimes I just need a vent, and sometimes I just need to cry, and sometimes I just need to lay down and not say anything at all. And I think being able to identify for yourself what you're needing and being able to articulate that to your partner is really important during such a turbulent time, really.
It's so important, right? Because the thing is, I'm number one, I'm a problem solver. Number two, I'm a mind mapper, which makes me a second order thinker. I'm always asking, okay, what's the underlying drivers behind this, right? Like, and it's not just the topical things, because when she's coming to me in tears, I'm already analyzing, that's a key word, right? Like, okay, but what is the underlying components? Is it because you don't feel like you have enough emotional bandwidth to be with your dad or your mom or your sister and, you know, and Rob or brother-in-law? Is it because, you know, your work is taking up so much time, right? Does that mean we need to communicate this to your work to make that space? Do we need to project management together in order to do that, right? But then Olivia's like, no, I just need you to listen, and just, I want to feel heard and understood at this moment, right? There's no degree of troubleshooting or problem solving that can bring that degree of emotional relief. And, you know, so that's my kind of lesson throughout this whole thing as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. We just had a wonderful guest on, Dr. Julie Shaw, who is she runs a amazing community around grief and loss, and it's called Hello, I'm Grieving. And a large part of what she talked about is just like listening and allowing the other person to be able to share, you know, like what they need during that time. And so I love that you create that space for Olivia, because and sometimes it's, you know, you can't even articulate all the time what you need in those moments, you know. So, you know, just keep giving yourself grace as well. But thank you so much for sharing so many great takeaways for couples navigating that.
Yeah, Olivia, again, I'm sorry for your loss. And Sheng, I want to go back to you. What are some of the most valuable lessons you've taken from each other, and how do these insights contribute to your shared vision for the future?
Yeah. I think, you know, Olivia has taught me a lot about flexibility, I would say, and you know, rolling with the punches for the most part. She's so much more adaptable than I am, because she lives her life in like going with the flow, one day at a time kind of deal, where I'm just like visualizing the future, and I'm like, you know, gunning towards it, right? So I think for me, it's actually about Like I've learned a lot about just like daily gratitude and appreciation practices. I literally incorporate that into my daily practice. Actually, there's two main ways I journal every day this morning, every morning these days. The first one is my brag book. So this is just reminding me of all the things I've already accomplished, how much of a badass I already am, that I am the best to go towards that, right? This is what I call kind of the expansion zone. However, you also want to make sure that your home base is pretty solid. And that's where the gratitude component comes in. It's like, even if I don't have this expansion and stuff like that, like, what am I thankful for, right? Even just this morning, I love California. It'll always be my home and stuff, right? So coming to Texas, I definitely had some discomfort and stuff like that. But for me, I was like, you know what? We got our own place. We get AC in this freaking 100+ degree weather. That's awesome. I have this privilege of going to the cafe every single day and still doing this, right? I have a roof over my head. And plus I get to wake up to my amazing partner who brings me peace and contentment every single day. So that is what I mean, our home base, essentially. So if you have your home base, very well defined every single day, as well as your expansion zone, this is how you can start pushing out, but without this insecurity or this angst, essentially.
I just love how the two of you complement each other. And Demisha and I always talk about how we're all students and we're all teachers, and how you both are able to learn from each other and balance each other, create balance within the relationship. And the other thing I want to touch on quickly is the bragging about being a badass in your journaling. I'm going to feel that. I'm going to use that with my clients. And I can, share that where I got it from. And because too many of us are afraid to celebrate our wins or our successes out of just societal commentary of coming across as arrogant or bragging. And I think it's so important. And Demisha's actually helped me to remember to celebrate the little wins and be in the journey, not the destination. And so taking those moments to just talk about, like you said, what a badass we are is so important. So many of us spend too much time in our heads thinking about or talking about our failures. So I absolutely love that reframe that you use. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm stealing that. Period. It's happening. I'm like, oh my gosh, I celebrate the wins, and like Ali was saying, the small wins, I'm very good at that. But really, just owning the fact that I'm a badass, that is, I just love that. I can't wait to use that with my clients. That's so good. I also journal daily in the morning and in the evening, and I always start with gratitude and I end the day with gratitude. But I'm going to incorporate the badass and bragging about my wins. I'm so going to do that. And at the end of the day, actually do a release. So I release anything that I want, for the day. Sometimes it's only one thing, sometimes it's 5, and so, but I love it because it allows me to just sleep in peace, and not really hold on to anything that happened throughout the day. So
I love that.
Yeah. So no, thank you. Well, you guys are both, like Ali said, student and teachers, are there any books or podcasts or resources that you have found profoundly impacted your personal or professional growth that both of you can share? So Sheng, we'll start with you, and then Olivia will go to you.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. So I think for me, on my Instagram, I say that I have the sensitivity of a poet and the discipline of a stoic, right? And I believe that you really need both in order to succeed, actually, just as a human being, right? You can't just be all hustle. You need some flow as well. So I think for me, one of my biggest influences, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So he's a Roman emperor back in the day, and it's Stoicism and all that. He's the discipline part, right? And that gives me a really important framework off of that. And then there's Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a Zen monk, essentially, and his book, How to Love, it's a small booklet with illustrations. It takes 30 minutes to read, but man, it's so packed with wisdom about literally how to love, right? So if you have the discipline, you have the love, it's really hard to go wrong in life. And you only need basically just sometimes, I know a lot of people who read like hundreds of books a year. I'm not like that. I literally only have like mainly 5 or 6 reference books, but I dig so deeply into them that I start embodying these essentially, geniuses essentially.
Wow. And please say his name again, because he's like one of
Yes.
my favorites. And I butcher his name every time. Like, I'm not afraid to say it. So
Yes.
how do
It's
you
Tak Na Han, I believe. Tak Na
Okay.
Han.
Because I've been calling him Thich Nhat Hanh and all kinds. I have
Yes.
all kinds
Yeah,
of fun
yeah.
names for him. But at the end of the day, I am obsessed with his work. Like
Yeah.
it is so powerful. And I've read like How to Love, How to Eat,
How to Eat is great.
like all
Yeah.
the, I mean, literally all of them. I just went
Yeah.
and I just went on the shelf at the bookstore and just
Yes.
grabbed them all. And I
Oh,
love it.
How to Fight is one of my
Oh my
favorites
gosh.
after. That's one of the best ones.
Such a great book. It helped me so much in like in my relationship. I was in a relationship where we were arguing a lot,
Yes.
relationship, and I read that book. I'm a student in the sense that when I realize that like how I'm showing up is not like me, I go find answers. And so I just came across that book after praying, and I was like, this book is so powerful, and it really helped me like in just my communication, like in those heated moments, and so yes, thank you so much for sharing, Olivia.
It's so necessary, actually. I just final thought, which is How to Fight is so necessary these days because he comes from a place of love, right? And often the opposite of love isn't hate, it's actually apathy. So it's like, okay, but how do we identify the common ground essentially when we fight? Then that's really the crux of that book that's so valuable, especially these days when we're so polarized as a society. I think How to Fight is extremely important from a place of love.
It is. Oh my gosh, so well stated, and it's so true because you're attacking the problem and not each other. So Olivia, love to hear from you.
This is so embarrassing because I'm gonna ask him what the book is, babe, the one that you based your empowering mind maps off of. Mark something.
Oh, Mark Minervini. It's Mindsets for Winning.
Ooh,
so he's a world-class stock trader, and he basically is such a freaking badass in many areas, like in different sports and all this stuff. And he wrote a book called Mindsets for Winning, Mark Minervini, and he breaks down the science of mindset like in a way that I've never seen before.
That makes it so tangible. I think that's why it was so powerful for me. I can re-listen to that on audio. I actually have it on audiobook, and I just drive. Like I made my commutes based off of that and based off of Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. Yes. So I'm bad with people's names. I barely know my uncle's name is the joke. So I can't keep up with these titles. But those two, I could re-listen to 1,000 times and still get stuff out of it. I feel like every verse is powerful. And I do love that he inspired some kind of a set of mind maps, if you will, that ask the same questions that Mark asked you to ask, but really kind of gives more of a structure to unpacking it. But I absolutely love it.
Osho, Daring to Live.
That's true. That's true. Absolutely.
You want to talk about that?
I like a lot of Osho stuff as well. There's also the Joy of Living. Oh my geez.
Joy Living, Dare to Live.
Dare to Live. Oh, that's true. That's true. So Osho stuff's really, that's the more grounding. So there's the hippie side and then there's the productivity side. I feel like everybody needs a little bit of both.
Yes. Oh, I love it. These are incredible resources that you guys have shared. And both Ali and I are huge Brene Brown fans. So could not agree more. I love a lot of her work, like talking around like shame and vulnerability. Really was game changer for me. So thank you so much for sharing.
And Olivia, I'm with you where I don't know if it's part of my neurodivergence as well, but where I know what the content is in a book or a song, but I struggle with names of authors or even the title of a song. So maybe that's something we can talk about at the two of us, because I have that same. Oh,
absolutely. It's so real. Like those, what do you call them? The trivias where people will start playing a song. I'm like, yeah, I know the song and I could probably even sing the lyrics in the song, but will I be able to stop you and tell you what song it is? No, absolutely not.
Yeah. No, I wonder. Yeah. So shifting just a little bit, Sheng, you've recently ventured into podcasting. How has this new platform allowed you to connect with your audience in a different way? And what inspired you to take this step?
Oh my gosh, it's been awesome actually. So I've been inspired by podcasting for a long time, but also because I've been invited to more podcasts like this, and I was like, oh, this is actually really fun, right? So I started, and it's called, well, actually, I launched a new project called Mind Map Gurus, and this is part of Mind Map Nation, my community. This is actually the soft launch for my upcoming podcast called Epiphany. But it's basically a similar format. It's like my format is literally the first hour is a workshop or a presentation by essentially a mind map expert. The second part is a podcast style interview, because my philosophy is like, some of the most life-changing insights isn't from the presentation. It's actually from the experiences of that speaker, right? That's where the real wisdom sometimes comes out. So it's been amazing because it's completely live streamed. So it's like we get the entire audience involved too. They will ask questions. I facilitate really. And I'm mapping during this time too. Sometimes I share my map with the audience and go like, hey, this is kind of where I'm thinking. Let's take this conversation this way. So it's very free flowing. I've learned a lot. It's a lot of fun. And my guests have been like really enjoying it too.
Thank you for sharing about your podcast. Yeah, we've absolutely enjoyed doing our podcast and learning just as much as we are teaching, yes. Right? Being both the student and the teacher. It's incredible. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I have a question for both of you around, it's something that we ask all of our guests, kind of a part of the tagline for the show, weekly fuel for your mind, body, and soul. What are some ways that you guys kind of self-care and fuel your soul? I know, Olivia, you kind of shared some of the things earlier, but what do you guys do?
Yeah, I'll start actually. So I have a pretty solid morning routine that I stick to, right? Because this is what I call generative activities. Again, if I don't do these things, I will just, I can't make the best use of my time. I'll feel crappy doing this. My mindset's going to be off. So essentially what I do is, first of all, I try to wake up as early as I can. So between 5 or 6 a.m., right? And sometimes it's a little bit tough, but I just remind myself, hey, this is going to be super worth it. After that, I try to get sunlight as quickly as possible. So this is from the Huberman podcast, essentially. And he's like the sunlight guy. It's like, get 15 minutes of sunlight a day. It kicks off a whole cascade of, hormonal reactions and stuff that's going to give you alertness, all that. I can attest to that for sure, because if I can get that sunlight within the first hour, it's awesome. And what I do is I go outside and I practice Wim Hof breathing for 15 to 20 minutes, right? 3 rounds. And it really just clarifies my mind. It always gives me a sense of peace. After I Wim Hof, I basically find a calisthenics gym somewhere like pull-up bar, and I do 20, 25 minutes essentially of workout. Relatively high heart rate gets me pumping. So that's kind of like the first 3 steps from a physical side. And then I go to a cafe and I just journal, right? My brag book, my gratitude journal, that's basically like how I do it. And after that, I'm pretty set. I just create a to-do mind map of what I want to do today, and I just hit it.
He's an absolute machine. I don't know how he just keeps going all the time.
The morning routine helps a lot.
The morning routine is huge. And I again, bring it back to a book I read called Beautiful Mornings. And it was a book for women. And it was a game changer for me after having children, because things are just very different after having children, and you're just trying to find your stride as a new mother and in this new body that you're in. And I really had to kind of redo every aspect of my life, including how I started my mornings. And so the book was it's such an easy read, a bunch of different stories of women that are sharing their morning routines, but it was so powerful and inspirational for me, because I was able to really understand that I gave myself permission to just do whatever worked for me and to try different things. So I love that you have that kind of strict morning routine for yourself. And I'm with you, Olivia. I probably couldn't do that.
Mine is not that direct for sure. Although I kind of a fun fact is my nickname in college was Pocahontas because I actually walk around barefoot often. So I don't necessarily have a big routine, but I do really love grounding, as weird as that is. But I mean, the reason they called me Pocahontas was because I was in the middle of a city walking around barefoot, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. But it gives you the same sense. And there's also something freeing about doing something that other people, I don't know, would question, look down on. It's a little bit, it's a let me get out of my little box and do what I want and still be me and in my own power kind of thing. So I feel like it might be twofold. But I don't have too much. I like morning routines when I'm in a certain structure. I like to do them, but I would say, well, since moving here and since it's still a new place, I can't pretend to have a super strict morning routine. But I would recommend grounding and meditation where anybody might benefit from that.
I love that. Are you a morning person like Sheng, or do you
it's interesting. Maybe I don't know.
You are.
I am.
She is.
I am. When we first met, though, we were exactly on the same clock. I mean, we would both wake up at like 5 a.m. every day. For whatever reason, I've shifted. Also, for whatever reason, there's a reason he's even answering a lot of these questions. I'm in a low right now, for sure. And so I actually have brain fog when I'm in a low. So I can't articulate myself. I have lots of thoughts, but unfortunately they get jumbled by the time they come out of my mouth. Yeah. And so unfortunately I totally love that, is that he can catch when I'm lower and sort of take things, because he knows what I want to say. I just can't articulate it all the time. So it's interesting. A lot of times I'll have a lot of structure to my morning routine when I have the energy for it, i.e. when I'm hypomanic. And if I'm not hypomanic, then sometimes just taking a shower, getting up in the morning and having a little tea is enough. And adjusting those expectations so I can be proud of the effort and not always the outcome.
Yeah. I love that. And Ali, shared that as well about, and I'll let you talk about that, Ali, but she has shared that with me, that she struggles with something similar. So the brain fog.
Yeah. So I was going to say that, thank you for sharing that, the low. I have ADHD, hyperactive, impulsive, and inattentive withdrawn combined type. And so I can completely relate to the brain fog. Mine happens on a daily basis, where it takes me till about probably 11 a.m. for everything to feel like it comes out smoothly and I can articulate, and I call it the morning fog. So it's interesting to hear, how much we can relate. We have different diagnoses, but we have similar symptoms.
And it's not easy because you don't want to self-load during that time. I feel like that's, again, where I found the diagnosis really empowering, because I could stop kicking myself. Of course, it happens. It's really natural. I think we live in a society where we feel like we have to be productive and we have to be able to express ourselves. I feel for that, because it becomes this whole self journey to discovering who I am, accepting who I am, and trying not to beat myself up for when I feel like I can't live up to this standard.
And on that same note, I talk to women with their menstrual cycles, for example, and they have different experiences at different times of the month. And again, the idea of meeting yourself where you're at, giving yourself grace, being gentle, and just because you have the capacity to do X, Y, and Z on one day, you may not on the other day. And so kind of waking up and checking in with where you're at and what you have to start with, what you need to do to fuel up more. And some of that is just rest, or just, saying no, or setting some of those internal and external boundaries. So thank you. Just shifting gears again, what's next for both of you? Any aspirations or goals you'd like to share with us?
I want to make sure there's nothing on the work front, but we are planning on heading out of the US. I'm going to make it public so it happens.
There we go.
January 10th.
January 7th.
Oh, sorry. I don't even know.
That's what I always say, guys. If you're going to set a goal, be very specific about what you want, when you want it, how you want it, who you want it with, right? Like, the more specific you are, again, it takes freaking courage to get there, right? Anybody can go, hey, I want to leave the country. It'll be cool to live in Thailand. But when are you going to do it? How are you going to do it? Who are you going to do it with? I'm always going to drill down these questions. Yeah, so anyways, we're going to leave January 7th.
That's amazing. And that's like from the book Atomic Habits with James Clear, he talks about don't just have dreams, but say when you're going to do it, where you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, create that visual mass so that it ends up happening. That's such a good reminder.
Yep. Yep. And, you know, the sub goals around that, right? Because once you have that vision, you can start really planning backwards. Everything else, it's funny enough, like everything else starts becoming very clear around that once you have that focus. I think for us, it's like being, you know, financially sustainable to essentially move across the world and still have a business to run, a community to rely on, and create community actually wherever we are too. My Map Nation is now like 140 people from around the world. Like literally we can go to any continent and we'll find like friends who are around, willing to show us around. We're more than willing to just like, you know, like get to know them. It's going to be really fun. So it's like, you know, how do you align your life with your goals, your work with your goals, right? On your own terms. It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of courage, but damn, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. First of all, incredible. Please let us know where you're going so then we can visit. And wow, like I mean, just so much in what you said around setting goals and really having a SMART goal, you know,
Yes.
and making sure that you have it time bound and know kind of the destination, but how you're going to get there too, and being very specific and courageous. So love all of that. You guys have been just incredible, and I know that so many takeaways like from today, for myself, for Ali, for our viewers. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a fantastic Sunday, everyone.
Thank you
so
guys.
much.
Thank you so much. Great to be on here.